Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep today, folks, really deep. This one is going to stay with you. It's a story people have been talking about and arguing over for centuries.
Oh, for sure. I love a story with a little oomph to it.
Well, you've got it with this one. We're jumping into Genesis chapter 45. Joseph, his brothers, the big reveal.
Talk about family drama. But it's more than just a juicy story, right? It makes you think about betrayal, forgiveness, how something awful, like really awful, can turn into something good.
Exactly. So how does this ancient story connect with us today? That's what we'll be exploring. Think about how this story sheds light on family dynamics, guilt, and forgiveness, how those things play out in our lives.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, huh?
Okay, set the scene. Joseph. He's a big deal in Egypt now. Years ago, his brothers sold him into slavery. Now, they've come to Egypt for help because there's a famine. They have no idea who he is.
Total dramatic irony. The tension must have been, oh, I can't even imagine.
I know, right? And then, boom. Joseph tells everyone to scram. He wants to be alone with his brothers.
Oh, he's gonna let him have it.
Right. Years of anger just waiting to explode. But here's the thing. Joseph starts crying, like sobbing, loudly.
Which is wild. Back then, men in power just didn't do that, especially in public. It was a huge display of emotion.
So he breaks down. Doesn't really scream revenge, does it?
Nope. It meant something different then. Crying wasn't weakness. It was like raw, powerful emotion. Grief, deep injustice. His brothers must have been floored.
Totally. Things are probably clicking into place for them. Oh, we're in trouble kind of moment.
The Bible says, and his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. They're speechless.
Okay, now I'm thinking about the psychology of guilt.
Mm.
Years they carried this secret. How do you live with that? Do you just tell yourself a story to justify it?
It's fascinating, right? Psychologists talk about this thing called cognitive dissonance. It's like we try to rationalize our actions,
Yeah.
especially the bad ones. So maybe they convinced themselves they were helping the family or that Joseph deserved it,
Or maybe they just buried those feelings, hoping they'd disappear.
which never really works, does it? And in this case, the past comes back with a vengeance. Literally, their brother who's now in charge. Yikes.
You think he's going to unleash the fury, right?
Yeah.
And then total curveball. He comforts them, tells them not to be upset with themselves.
Talk about radical forgiveness. Back then, revenge was pretty much expected. This is a whole other level.
He actually says, "Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life."
Whoa. He's saying it was all part of God's plan. So what do you think? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
It makes me think about finding meaning in pain, even when it seems impossible. I mean, we can't excuse harmful actions, but maybe, just maybe, something good can come out of
It
it.
takes a lot of faith, huh?
A lot of faith. And then bam, another plot twist. Family reunion time. Joseph invites everyone to come live in Egypt, safe and sound. He even sends wagons overflowing with gifts. He's all in on reconciliation.
More than just an invitation. It's like a total reset. Full-on generosity. There's a quote I love. Also regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. It says it all.
He's giving them a fresh start, a new chapter. But we can't forget about Jacob, Joseph's dad. He thinks his son is dead. Can you imagine getting news like that?
It's hard to wrap your head around. The text says Jacob is just overwhelmed, can't believe it at first, and then he sees the wagons, the mountains of gifts. It's like proof.
And his reaction, heartbreaking. He says, "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die." It's love, pure and simple.
Love and hope, right? Even after all those years. It's powerful stuff.
It makes you think, what would it take to forgive like that? Joseph sets a pretty high bar.
No kidding. And, this is just the beginning. We've got a lot more to unpack, right? So let's dive into some of the deeper stuff. This story gets pretty intense.
Man, that reunion. Intense, right? Like something out of Shakespeare, but in ancient Egypt.
I know, right? But there's so much going on beneath the surface. Psychologically, spiritually even. It's deep.
Deep, for sure. One thing that sticks with me is how Joseph deals with what happened to him. Remember that quote? God did send me before you to preserve life.
Yeah, he's basically saying his brother's messed up actions. Part of God's plan.
Which is a tough one, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal with suffering, especially when someone else caused it? This story doesn't exactly give us easy answers, but it does make you think about, like, maybe there's a bigger picture, even when things are terrible.
Right. It's not about denying the pain or saying what happened was okay. It's more like, can you find meaning, growth, even in the midst of, hardship?
Finding meaning when it feels impossible.
Mm.
And that's where this idea of redemption comes in. It's not just about Joseph forgiving his brothers. It's about his own journey, like
Mm.
healing and becoming whole again.
It's powerful. He could have just been, bitter and angry,
Yeah.
stuck in the past. But he chooses a different path.
Rises above it all, becomes a leader, takes care of his family, even Egypt.
Talk about resilience.
All right. But, okay, let's talk about forgiveness. Easy to say, so hard to actually do.
Oh, tell me about it. It's not about saying what happened was fine. It's about letting go of the anger, the resentment. That stuff eats you alive.
You got to realize holding on to it, it hurts you more than it hurts them.
Yeah. And forgiveness, it acknowledges that we all make mistakes. We're all messed up sometimes, capable of great things, but also capable of really hurting each other.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity. And Joseph forgiving his brothers, it takes strength, not weakness.
Absolutely. But how does this apply to us? I mean, we're not facing famines and slavery, but we've all been betrayed. We've all been hurt.
Yeah, everyone's got a story, right?
Exactly. So, Joseph, what can we learn from him? Think about it. Have you ever had to forgive someone who really hurt you?
Oh, tough one. It's not always easy, is it? What's the answer?
Well, look at Joseph. It reminds us that forgiveness, it's a choice. It's not just a feeling. You have to choose to do it.
And sometimes it takes time, right? Like, remember, when the brothers show up in Egypt, they don't know it's Joseph. They're carrying all this guilt, this fear of being found out.
Can you imagine? Family dinner would have been so awkward.
Super awkward.
Yeah.
But you see hints of Joseph's compassion, right?
Yeah.
He's testing them, yeah, but he's also taking care of them. Like, getting ready for that reconciliation, even if they don't see it coming.
And when the truth comes out, he doesn't dwell on the past. It's all about moving forward, rebuilding.
Powerful message.
Forgiveness in action, not just words. You're creating a new story, even if the old one was full of pain.
Easier said than done. It's going
Yeah.
to get messy, right?
Oh, yeah. Tears, arguments, old stuff coming back. But if both sides are really committed, if they can be honest with each other, vulnerable even, that's when the healing starts. That's what the story's about, I think.
Hope. In a world where it feels like we're so quick to judge, so slow to forgive, this story hits hard.
No kidding. Reconciliation is always possible, always. But we haven't talked about Jacob enough. I mean, his perspective is huge. It's more than Joseph forgiving his brothers. It's a family coming back together after years of loss.
Oh, yeah. We talked about his initial reaction, that shock. But there's so much more there. Jacob's journey, parental grief, the power of family. Like, that's a whole other deep dive. I'm telling you, this story just keeps unfolding. It's amazing how these ancient stories can feel so real, so relevant to us today.
It really is. And, we're just getting started. We've talked about Joseph, his amazing ability to forgive, but Jacob, his dad, that reunion, it's a whole other level of emotion.
Definitely. We talked about his initial reaction, that shock of hearing Joseph's alive. But imagine thinking your child is dead for years. How do you even process that?
It's got to be devastating.
Right.
Think about grief, the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Jacob probably went through all of them, multiple times maybe, and then boom, Joseph's back.
It's like he has to grieve all over again, but in reverse. All those buried feelings, all that pain, it comes flooding back.
And he's seeing Joseph not as the kid he lost, but as this powerful man. It's a lot to take in,
The text says, when Jacob sees those wagons, all those gifts, he's speechless. It's like, that's when it becomes real for him. Proof.
Those gifts, it's more than just stuff. It's Joseph showing his love, his generosity. He's taking care of his family.
And for Jacob, it's like validation. His son isn't just alive, he's doing well. All those years of pain, all that wondering, maybe it meant something.
It shows how strong the human heart is, even when all hope seems lost.
And then Jacob says, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. I get chills every time I read that. It's pure love, a father's love.
It's about connection, family, forgiveness. We all want that, right? No matter what.
It's what makes this story so powerful. It's a family. We all get it, Sibling rivalry, parental expectations, the good, the bad, the messy. It's all there.
It's like looking in a mirror. I mean, who hasn't felt jealous of their brother or sister? Who hasn't hurt someone they love and wish they could take it back?
We're all capable of amazing things and terrible things. That's what this story reminds us of. It's never too late for redemption.
Right. And it makes you think about the impact our actions have. The brothers selling Joseph, it doesn't just affect them, it affects the whole family, even Egypt.
They cause so much pain, but it also leads to their survival during the famine, like a real-life butterfly effect.
It's crazy. It makes you think about choices. You never know the consequences, good or bad. Sometimes even terrible actions, they can have unexpected results.
It's like there's a bigger plan, even when we can't see it. Even when things are dark, there's always hope, always a chance for redemption.
I think that's the message, isn't it? Forgiveness is possible, families can heal, and we can survive, even thrive, in the face of suffering.
Wow. So much to think about. We could talk about this story forever.
I know, right? It just stays with you.
Well, that about wraps up this deep dive. But before we go, I got to ask, what's one question you want to leave our listeners with today?
How about this? After hearing this story, how do you feel about forgiveness now? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to forgive someone or ask for forgiveness? What did you learn? How can we all try to be more like Joseph, a little more compassionate, a little more forgiving?
Great questions. It's a good reminder that forgiveness, it's a journey. It's
Yeah.
not easy. But when we choose to forgive, we free ourselves from the past. And who knows, maybe we even open the door to a brighter future.
I like that. Lots to ponder today.
Absolutely. And I hope it inspires everyone to explore this incredible story, really dig deep into it.
Me too. There's always more to learn.
And that's it for this deep dive, folks. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in next time for a totally different topic, a deep dive into, well, you'll just have to wait and see. Until then, keep those minds engaged, keep exploring, and keep listening.